White Power. I'm your host, Teodora, and I'm joined with
Jack Mollahan.
For the third week in a row. We're so lucky to have you.
It's going to be really sad for both of us next week, and I'm not going to be able to be here because of my conference. This is really going to stink.
Maybe you should just not go to your conferences.
No. I wish.
Yeah,
Actually, no, I don't wish. I'm very excited.
Today's going to be a great show because both Jack and I are very heavily caffeinated, which is what we were talking about.
I was also in super charisma mode as I was presenting my senior thesis today to a bunch of people.
How was that? How'd it go?
It went really, really well. And then it started raining outside, and I had to walk through the rain. So, oh well.
Yeah, it was raining. I didn't know it was pouring when I got out, and then I had to walk across campus, and I was like, I don't like that. But yeah. I lived, I didn't melt or anything.
We'll survive.
Yeah, we will survive. It's just a little bit of rain.
Just another day in New Rochelle, baby. That's all it is.
Weren't we just talking about this like 2 weeks ago? It's always raining here.
Yeah, it is. But honestly, I kind of like the rain here. I kind of like the rain. I'm a big rain.
I like the rain when I'm inside. I don't want to deal with it.
Let's focus on our subject.
Okay,
we have a subject for today.
Today, I thought it would be fun. Jack and I, we like to get into little discussions about
That's a good way of putting it. We like to get into little discussions. Yeah, we do like to get into little discussions.
Little discussions about political topics, historical
narratives.
And I just say that I feel like I personally have the greatest analysis. And Jack has like a pretty decent one.
Oh, so, just decent.
Yeah. So I think it's very interesting. So this week it was some breaking news that happened. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, it's not confirmed yet by her, but it's talks that she has been talking to MSNBC and that she is potentially going to be starting a show with MSNBC. So she would be leaving the White House to host the show for their streaming service, which would be Paramount. And so a lot of people have opinions on it. Jack and I just so happen to have different opinions.
Dramatically different. And if I may, I do want to state some groundwork that I think is very important before we talk about this.
Go right ahead.
About why MSNBC is most likely, in my view of it, keep in mind, I'm not a mass comm major, I'm just a political science guy. Why they're doing it, what's the importance of it. And I think this is a big thing, and this kind of explains in a lot of ways why MSNBC would make a decision like this that I think we can all kind of see, those of us who understand what's going on, is going to be very controversial, and we can get into it in a second a little bit more. And forgive me if I'm wrong for saying this. It's because MSNBC they have like the third ranked show in all of the views. Right now, yeah. Fox News is Tucker Carlson and The Five.
Yeah.
And then Water's World, I believe, is the third. And then MSNBC comes in with their headliner, Rachel Maddow, who is retiring, right? Which is a huge thing. She has one of the most, at one point, she had the second or the first most watched show in the hour. I forget what you would call it. I'm blanking out. But like in that big primetime hour, the primetime hour. And she was huge. She was massive. There was so much money coming in for MSNBC. It was during the Trump scandals, or one of the many Trump scandals, mainly with the Russian issues. And it was when the Mueller report came out, and it was every night a special announcement from Rachel Maddow involving the Mueller investigation. Yeah. And right now they have dropped drastically. I mean, CNN I was reading somewhere they lost like 21% of their, MSNBC, I should say, has lost 21% of their viewership overall in a year, while Fox has gained, I think, 46%, some incredible number. Fox, I think Tucker Carlson in February had an average of 2.769 million views a night. MSNBC's headline show had 1.7 million views in their primetime hour, something like that. They are getting, or it might have been a little bit less. They're getting blown out of the water by double numbers on Fox.
You think it's all just like a business trick for them to just start getting more money?
I think it is, because if you look at a lot of these institutions, right? If Fox had put on Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Sean Spice, Sean Spencer Spice, I forget his full name, but these two big names in Trump's White House, they're going to do it to get Trump viewers. I mean, we can talk about whether these institutions, like the reporters on them, I believe, are most likely neutral. They might have a leaning, they might have a philosophy
Mhm.
which they follow, but I don't believe that they're necessarily party agents, right? As a lot of people point out. But we do know, and there's tons of studies out there, more liberal and left-leaning individuals watch MSNBC, watch CNN. More right-wing leaning
Because
individuals watch
MSNBC
Fox.
because MSNBC is, I think, one of the most left leaning. Like, you're not going to watch.
It is.
Yeah, so which makes sense.
CNN is neutral, and I like to say CNN is hemorrhaging at this point with their views. I don't even think that they're barely making 1 million views on their primetime hour,
Yeah,
which is
that's
very
true.
sad because
But
I like
also,
Anderson Cooper and I want him to stay up there.
I love Anderson Cooper too.
I think that's the one thing we agree on involving the news. We need to save Anderson Cooper. He looks like the nicest person on the earth. Like, I have a big soft spot in my heart for people who do conflict journalism. I think it's incredibly important. I think Anderson Cooper, he's a primetime, news anchor, and he's been to war zones. He's been embedded with Marines. He's been embedded with Army soldiers. This is not a small feat to do. Even if you're a primetime news agent, you might not be on the front line, but you're still taking shelling. You're still getting shot at. That is a big deal. And you are finding real, true, genuine news like coverage that needs to happen.
Yeah.
This is not a small feat.
And I do want to just say, like, to go off on what you were saying. Yeah, I do also think it is a business trick too. They're obviously doing it to get more viewers, to get more money. Yeah. 100%. Why does anyone do anything in any industry? It's always to get more money. It's all about money. Baby. So we can agree on that. But I do want to just say, like, when it comes to like cable news specifically, the people that watch cable news, generally speaking, they're all older generations.
And they also have their mind very much decided. They are very cemented in their position.
Oh, did you see? There's a new study that came out, and the new study, this was recent. I don't know the name of it. It's like
It's a study.
It's a study. It briefly came out. I will have more fish on it, but it was this new study came out, and they took people that religiously watch Fox News, and they made them watch CNN for a while. I think it was maybe like a week, and then they weren't allowed to watch anything from Fox.
Oh my gosh!
I know, right?
That's
Crazy.
Really dangerous.
And in just that like week, they have shifted so many of their political views to genuinely and they genuinely think otherwise now. So it just goes to show, like, people are very. It's not even like
they're very malleable.
Yeah. But that's a good thing, though. I feel like it could be a good thing because a lot of people are saying, like, "Oh, this is so bad."
It can also be a bad thing.
It can be a bad thing, but I think it's good because at least we know we can change.
Yeah, I mean, and now that we know that we can change, we have to make sure that the right people are changing us, right? We have to make sure that the people in power who are profiteering off of our change are not profiteering off our change. We as a society are gaining from this change. This isn't just a money grab, right? This isn't just, a corporation saying, well, we think we're best, but we also think we're best because we want to make more money. So let's use them up, baby. Let's do this thing. Let's get this business rolling. Let's get our stock price jumped. Let's get our viewer count jumped. Let's convince these people that we're right, so that way they only stick with us.
Yeah.
That's my big issue with a lot of corporations itself, with a lot of news agencies. That's why I'm always very hesitant. That's why I always, for the longest time, I was a huge supporter of Vice News because they were one of these middle of the road names that they were going to go get the story, right? I mean, Ukraine in 2014 was not getting covered in the same way that it is now, but it wasn't even getting relative coverage, right? You'd have to wait until, I forget how they do blocks, but like one of the later blocks on CNN, like it'd be Anderson Cooper hour, and it wouldn't be until like the last one of the last few blocks that they'd be like, oh yeah, by the way, they just had this revolution in Ukraine or this uprising in Ukraine, and like a bunch of people were getting shot at by the government, and this is, no good thing. And there was no concentration in it back then, but Vice News was sending reporters into it who were native Ukrainians. They spoke the language. They knew the issues, the geopolitical issues, and this was not being covered as well. And the thing is, they, CNN and MSNBC, these mainstream news networks, they need to make the money because that's where their audience is. They have this captive audience.
But can you blame them for that? Because I think at least from what I've seen, it's not really that they're not choosing to cover what's important. It's just like they're covering what they need to cover, so it's like, if everyone is interested in talking about this, you know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, if your viewers want to see this, are you just not supposed to show them that?
Well, see, I get what you're saying, and I understand that the system being in place is, you can blame it on the system. You can throw it to the system. I'm not saying the system is perfect, but what I am saying is they're not right either, because if that's the case, how was Vice News gaining millions of views on their video, right, about this issue, right? Clearly, they're just catering to an audience which likes them, right? And the other thing too is that company will view Vice in a negative scale because their thought is you're taking viewership from us, when in reality they're just pulling from two different sides of the viewership.
But
Like,
I do also have to say, like, from seeing from a little bit more of like an insider's perspective, everything that goes on Vice is different
your
because
computer's not going.
what the hell?
I don't. Are we still
It
going?
just shut off. I don't know if we're still going. Actually, no idea.
That's weird.
It is.
Yeah,
Technical
it's so
difficulties in the
funny.
WICR studio. Classic.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I was gonna say from an insider's perspective, when you look, okay, so CNN, NBC, ABC, PBS, Fox.
Don't throw PBS in there, okay?
I
just want to say,
I gotta tell you, the Big
independent.
Six.
They are publicly sourced. They are doing their best.
The Big Six, they're going up. They're being nationally streamed. A big thing for nationally streamed services, you have to have everything confirmed.
Yeah.
And when you're in a time of war, you can't just like, oh, my reporter saw this. It has to be confirmed by 1, 2, 3 before you put it
Yeah.
up and you can talk about
No,
it.
that makes sense. But here's the thing: they're all confirming each other. It's PBS, Fox, MSNBC, right? They're all confirming each other. It's our guy got this. Well, our guy says this. So then they call their other guy up and they're like, our guy says this. They're like, our guy on the ground says this too. It's all their guys on the ground. I mean, to say that they're publicly like they need multiple.
But the thing is, you can't confirm from a journalist. That's what's going on the inside. You can't confirm just from a journalist. I can go and I can witness a car accident. I could be like, but me as a journalist, I can't be like, oh, this is what I saw, because that's unethical.
But
I'm not allowed to do that.
Six,
I
if
can
you have
talk to
six
someone.
journalists, right? If you have 6 journalists from the Big Six, or
Mhm.
however big they are, right? They go in there. They're all watching this one intersection, and a car accident happens. They can all look at each other and say, "I saw that car accident. Did you see that? Yes, I saw that. Did you see that? Did you see that? Are they allowed to do that? Is that allowed?
That's unethical.
That's unethical.
That's unethical. You
Out of
have
all
to,
the things
you
they can
have
do,
to see-
that's the unethical thing.
You
That's
can
the
see,
unethical
let's say
thing
I
for
can
them.
go to.
That's strange.
I can go. Let's say like I'm somewhere and you witnessed the car accident, but I have to go live.
Yeah.
I can interview you because you witnessed car accident. You're a witness to that because you're
Yeah.
not a journalist.
Now,
right?
here's the thing.
But I can also talk to the police, which is what I should be doing. I
Yeah.
should be going to the police. I should be going. So when you're in a time of war, you should be talking to the Secretary of Defense. You should be talking to a war general. You should be talking to someone like that. And those people are very difficult to get during times of war. So yeah.
But if I work for MSNBC and you work for PBS, the greatest news station on earth, and you're working for PBS and I'm working for MSNBC, and I interview 2 sources and you interview 2 separate sources, can you take my interview from those 2 sources and use that to support your view of having your 6 confirmed sources?
We
So
would
now you
have
have
to
4
pay
sources.
you. We would have to pay you because that's not ours. That's yours.
But if we don't, but if you're exchanging information, you take my 2, I take your 2.
do they don't exchange information? It doesn't work like that.
But I'm just saying, is it possible?
If it's possible,
Okay.
sure. If you all want to work together and like be one big happy family,
That's
that's
not
sure. But
gonna
again,
happen, but
it's business. At the end of the day, business is business.
Yeah.
But going back to Jen Psaki. So Jack, what are your opinions? Jen Psaki, she is the press secretary right now for Joe Biden's administration. What are your thoughts? Right now it's not confirmed, obviously, but with the way that it's looking, it seems like it will be for sure.
She's
going to happen.
I think she's probably going to get
Yeah.
hired. It's a money thing at the end of the
Yeah,
day. They're
I think so
losing
too.
Rachel Maddow, huge journalist, or not even, I don't know. I think she's I'm fairly
Yeah.
certain she has a journalism background. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think she's just like, I'm just a commentator. If I may, there have been like 46 press secretaries or something. I think the first one was under Roosevelt. The position was established only like the 1930s, right? It's a very recent position. It used to be just the communications director. There was no real press secretary.
But a lot of the people that had the position beforehand came from press.
Yes, they did
So,
come to the press.
yeah.
I will say that is a very important thing. A lot of them, they were journalists themselves in some
Yes.
instances. But the other thing is they were also PR managers. They were also marketing people.
Mhm.
These are not just people who have always been press. And I will say, I read up on Jen Psaki's, like just a very brief synopsis of it, of what her resume looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, you were a press secretary. She was the deputy press secretary for the State Department. That's a very big deal. That I would argue that the press secretary for the State Department is more important than the press secretary for the White House, because this isn't just policy with a mixed mash of politics.
Mhm.
The State Department it has politicians in it, but it's meant to be a more neutral political entity, and to keep that space going is much more important. It's much more high risk. You're talking about very different things, and sometimes you're going to have to counter what the White House says, because you have to sometimes work as a more autonomous agency, right, for the grand scheme of American foreign policy efforts, right? I think she has a great resume. I will not say that she does not. I may not agree with her style, but I will not say that she's not a good candidate for being press secretary. And
Yeah.
I would also say that she's not a bad candidate to choose as being an anchor of one of your big headline shows. What I will say is I do not like the idea of her coming in to be an anchor during the middle of the person that she just served under his presidency as it continues.
So you would be okay with it if, let's say Biden just finishes out his 4 years, and let's say he doesn't go for another 4. You would be okay with it if she starts then?
I would be more okay with that, because the other thing too, I'd like that George Stephanopoulos, he was the de facto press secretary. He was never actually put in as the full-time press secretary.
Yeah.
He has his own show, right? I don't think he got it right after, but he did have his own show. And many of these people go on to be political pundits. I would like to state first, being in news, like being the anchor and the face of the show, is different than the pundit. I'm more okay with them being a pundit, because at least there's an understanding to most people who know what a pundit is. There's bias involved in there. This is their opinion. This is not, they're not being necessarily full-time journalists or to the fullest aspect. They are a pundit. They are there to provide a side of the argument.
For what she's going in for, she's not anchoring your news. She's not telling you your morning news and anchoring like, hey guys, this is what's going on. So there was a car accident here. There was this going on here. She's going in to literally give her perspective, her point of view. And MSNBC, are they not known for being more opinionated shows? It's not like you're going to go there and you're going to get your center. That's why I'm okay with it. I don't see any problem with her doing it. I think for sure there is some ethical and legal, questions that come into play, and I think
a lot of ethical questions.
And from what we know, again, we don't know much, but from what we have known, she has said that she's gone through every legal and ethical. She's gone through it. She's
our
talked
system
about
of
it.
legality and ethics always works 100% of the time.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
For sure. Okay, there may be some flukes. There may be some faults in it. Maybe we don't know, but I'm saying
we have
from what we know, she's saying that she's going through everything legally and ethically. And the main concern that I've seen that people have is people are not okay with her doing it while she's currently there. They want her to first leave and then
she should most certainly have to leave. I will say that if there is an idea, I don't know if there's an idea of it being floated that she does her show and is the press secretary full time. I am 100% not okay with that.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be okay. If she's being press secretary and doing a show, I think that's a different story. I think I think right now what she's doing is fine. If she's press secretary right now and she's talking to people like, hey, this is what I want to do. Because I'm all for, I fully agree. If you want to leave a position and you want to get a job, go ahead. You shouldn't leave a job until you're secured for another one. I fully agree. I think that's a great thing to do for yourself. And I think even if you are someone who is the press secretary, I think regardless of that, as long as you're not crossing any lines, as long as you're not telling MSNBC something that you shouldn't be saying because you're the press secretary and you have a little bit more information. Yeah. But it's also it's not like she's the Secretary of Defense. It's not like she knows information. She is the voice of the president, but she doesn't know she knows.
She doesn't have the highest security clearance.
That's what I'm saying. She doesn't have the highest security clearance.
I will say this. When you work in the executive, I think you should have to follow a different set of ethical rules. And this is my belief. If you're the press secretary or if you're a special advisor to the president, I do not think you should be working in the private sector. I do not believe that you should be working in the private sector. And my reason for that is because you bring in a certain factor. Your focus should be the office of the executive itself, not the office of the executive itself. And, oh, by the way, your contracting and lobbying job that you're doing for Lockheed Martin, or your job that you're working as a anchor for a primetime show on MSNBC, right? Those are two separate entities. If we're going to have a private system and a public system, and the public system is going to work in the benefit of the people and the ideas of the people, and the private system is going to work in the benefit of making money, they must be separate. They must be separate. And that's an issue that I do not like. I do not like people working for both at the same time, which some people do. Some people who are special advisors to the president, they will also go work as a lobbyist, or they'll be doing something on the board of directors of something or another. If it is expected, which it should be, that the president puts his holdings in trust and his company in trust, an independent trust, then it should be expected that the individuals who are working directly for the president, right, if their designation is I am the executive's so-and-so, they must be working for the executive and the executive alone, right? And that's a very crucial thing. I think they have to have all their eggs in one basket. This is not something where you have one foot in and one foot out. This is the American people's future, and that's something that needs to be important. I will say my reservation coming from her leaving, right after. And I understand what you're saying. She's a political pundit in a lot of ways. She's not giving the news, she's giving her opinion.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's necessarily what news should be like. I don't think news should
But
have
I think
this
that's
is
a
my
different conversation. I think
well,
that's like
that is.
if she
But
was going if she was
but if
going
we're
to
gonna have that
anchor.
conversation, shouldn't we have it now too? Because
Yeah,
it's just as
okay. So
important
let's do,
now.
I then
Well, no,
I
no.
agree. I agree. I fully think that if we're going to talk about the news, then I think yeah, that's great. But also like if you're going to watch one person's primetime show where they're fully just giving their opinion. It's like someone
Yeah.
watching this show and then saying everything that we say and being like, "Yep, that's the way that the
But
world
she
works," but it's
also
not. It's
has she
opinionated.
also has a bigger effect, right? Because now it's not just, oh, this is like the former White House press secretary of Bush, right? I think one of the former
But
legal advisors is on CNN right now for Bush. And she was like one of their big, like, this is a Republican that we have on. Like, she's a registered Republican. She's worked for the Republican Party. She caucused with the Republic. She did something or another. I forget what her name is. I'm not a big fan of her. I don't like the way that she presents her statements and arguments. But I don't like her effect on most people, on like the average person, right? I don't think she's offering as skewed an idea because the person's no longer in office, right? There's no connection to it, right? Like there's not as much a connection to it. Right now, Jen Psaki has most certainly spoken to the president multiple times. She has been invested. She might be the voice of the people, but she still has some insider information on what's the goal of the president right now. What is his motives? What is he doing? What is his position going to be? Where is he looking 3 years down the line or 2 years down the
so
line?
are you afraid of her saying something? Are you afraid of her
I'm
essentially
afraid of
being a
her spin.
whistleblower?
I know I'm afraid of her being a spin artist.
Mhm.
I'm afraid of her being a spin artist, just like I'm afraid when the Fox News pundits want to be spin artists for the Republicans and throw it off to someone else. If you're going to be an opinionated newscaster or a neutral newscaster, I still want you to shout when someone has done something wrong.
I agree.
If it's
I agree.
morally reprehensible, if it's in any way, right? And it can go beyond that, right? Because that's the thing is everyone's morals line up in a different way. They stack in a different way. If a congressman votes against a bill that would, limit religious institutions or votes for it, I still want the pundits, whether they agree with it or don't, to go out there and say, this is not right. And the thing is, I don't necessarily know if someone who has had that much insight and that much knowledge and that much connection with the institution, which is currently happening and currently going on, can offer that if all of a sudden Joe Biden has to make a complete 180 in some instance, right? Are they going
But
to
wouldn't
become
that be a good thing? Wouldn't that if she has an insight into something more than someone else does, right? And she can give what she has
we
witnessed.
also have to believe that she's being truthful and honest with
Yeah,
us.
that's true. But
And
that's the
that's a
thing. But if
big
you're going to be a
ask.
journalist, that's like your
She's
first
not,
and
she's not
foremost.
necessarily a journalist,
Okay.
though. She's a political pundit. Keep in
Okay,
mind, it's a prime
okay.
time out. She's not acting as a journalist. If she would, she'd be taking it from a neutral position, like she's giving the news, like she's.
So
talking
then
about
so
car
then are we
crashes.
saying that a majority of MSNBC is now not?
Well, they mark themselves as entertainment. Rachel
yeah.
Maddow did that when she got sued, just
Mhm.
like Alex Jones did that when he
Yeah.
got sued, which is a whole other thing. And just like Hannity did it when he got sued, I think he got sued. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
everyone calls themselves
All of them have been
entertainers.
sued.
Yeah.
They're entertainers. They're not news
Which is
agents.
why everything you hear from said shows should be taken with a grain of salt. It's people giving
You're
their
asking
political.
a lot of the American people to do that. Because it's under MSNBC News. This is the MSNBC. We're a news agency, but we also offer entertainment because we're entertainers. Are you the news or are you entertainment? What's your goal
Yeah.
here? And that's my issue, is that she is taking the position that she has had and held in a current administration, and which is supposed to be a position which works within the betterment of people.
So then can I ask you
And
this?
she's going into entertainment
So then
and
what
holding
are
those two values at the same time.
So then what are your thoughts on, let's say something is happening behind the scenes, right? And she does want, let's say, I'm not saying this is happening, but let's say it is, right? And let's say she pulls a Mark Felt. He worked for the FBI. He was the one that
he was the whistleblower.
He was the whistleblower for Watergate.
Yeah, he was Deep Throat, right?
Yeah, he was Deep Throat.
Yeah. First off, she would have to resign. I think because Mark Felt, what he was doing was slightly separate, right? If she's going to work as a whistleblower, that's different. But if she's working as a whistleblower, she shouldn't be going to MSNBC because no one should profit off of a whistleblower, right? It changes the entire scope of being a whistleblower. If you're profiting off of being a whistleblower, then you're not in the same scope. Mark Felt did not, to the best of my knowledge, he did not gain anything.
He didn't even say that he
was anonymous. It was later. Found out until years later, right? His goal, he went to where'd you go? Washington. He went to one of the,
for what?
what was the newspaper he went to?
Washington Post.
Washington Post. I was going to say Washington Post, but I wasn't sure if I was being
Yeah, it was
more.
Washington Post.
He went to the Washington Post. The Washington Post is the only one who has something to gain. And by the way, they're not gaining much. They're just running a story. That's their
they had
job.
a lot of lawsuits at that time too.
Yeah, they had a lot of
because
lawsuits.
of that. Yeah,
They had I forget if the Vietnam papers happened before, after that, right? The Washington Post was in hot water for a long time, especially economically. And wasn't the former director of the Washington Post, or like one of the CFOs? He was what's his name? He worked under Nixon. He's part of the reason that, you know, all this, there was issues with him and the Vietnam papers and stuff like that. I forget what his name is though. He had a weird haircut though. Like he had like a half part and he had glasses on. I forget his name. But like there was issues with him, and I think he was related to news agencies at one point.
So then in this case, would you then think, so you think it's okay, it would be okay for Jen Psaki to get this deal if it were after President Biden's administration,
and
not during.
If
but
Joe
what if
runs
she
again,
doesn't say anything at all? What if it's nothing to do with? So you just think it's bad because she has an insight into this current administration.
I think
so. Anything she says can be viewed as skewed information.
It can be viewed as skewed information.
But can anything be anyone says? My point is, can't anyone have skewed information at all? So now, what do we say when we have a White House correspondent? What happens when that happens?
Well, my argument, White House correspondents are technically independent, aren't they? Not. They're not. It is a reasonable and logical assumption in certain right. I'd also like to say part of my position comes from the fact that so many people are so they're so challenging on the aspect of whether news is legitimate or not. We're living in an age where the president, or the former president, I should say, thankfully former president, has called CNN fake news.
Yeah.
Right? Where we have politicians who are able to get away with lying to the American people's face because they have convinced the American people that the agency, which is supposed to be a neutral party, is lying to them and getting away with it. And they're getting away with it because there's inside government actors. This is not just about whether I think Jen Psaki should do this or not. This is about whether this is going to further taint the news industry and the effect it's having on people.
I can see that.
That's a key issue right now. When people go out of their way and they say, hey, because I'm a firm believer that if someone is saying something, right, the goal should not be to necessarily silence them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this is a person who is espousing bigoted views, right, clearly not a good thing. But it does not necessarily mean that we should silence them. Instead, we should offer a counter, because so many people, I don't know if you've ever heard of Daryl Davis. I believe his name's Daryl Davis. He is a jazz guitarist or blues musician. I forget what it is. He's a black man, and he has converted hundreds of KKK and white supremacists to being no longer members of the KKK. He has hundreds of robes. You know how he's done it? He sat down and talked with them, and he's broken down their logic reasonably and done it in a professional and kind way. He has convinced these people that the idea they espouse to is factually incorrect. It is incorrect. That is the way that we handle this.
Which
we don't handle this but we don't handle this through putting more ammo in their side by saying, like, because how can MSNBC say now, like, oh, well, if they make the claim we're a neutral agency, even in like our entertainment's separate, but like as a news agency, well, this person works for you, so you can't say that you're a neutral news agency because you have an entertainment division which is not neutral.
So which goes back to what I talk about this a lot. I think the whole idea of media literacy, I think that should be taught to everybody, because especially right now,
There's
I feel
so
like
many
most
things
people
that should be taught and not being taught.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Let's not deny it here.
No, 100%. But it's like people think that just because they see something on MSNBC, Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, whatever they see it on, everyone just believes that what they see is just factual evidence all the time, and that's not necessarily it, because you have people have shows, they have their own skewed biases, and that goes, and it doesn't matter where you get your news from. That could also be over social media too, because a lot of people are looking at that. Younger generations use more social media than they do cable news.
It's a great and evil thing.
It's a wonderful and an evil thing entirely. Yeah. And we could get into a whole conversation about people wanting to regulate social media.
That can be later. That can be later in the hour. Yeah. We'll be going over this for the whole hour.
Okay, we'll play some music, and then we'll come back in a few seconds.
Yeah. Let's play some nice throwback music. What do we got? I know some people liked Sade last time.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, I think we should switch it up. How about Party Rock? Everyone loves Party Rock, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
That's so I've heard. I heard the kids love Party Rock. It's a throwback song. Get excited. We'll do Avril Lavigne later.
Okay.
Party rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time. And we gon' make you lose your mind. Everybody just have a good time. Party rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time. And we gon' make you lose your mind.
I hope everyone enjoyed that party rock moment. It really broke up this slightly heated discussion that we're having.
It wasn't heated. I feel like we're having a great conversation. It's better than the ones we've had before.
We have so many heated conversations. And it's not even heated in a bad way. It's heated in a very good and productive way. But the thing is, not many people want to listen to this. I'm sure all the people who are currently listening, if this is being broadcasted.
I feel like 0 people are even listening.
Well, everyone in La Penta, everyone in this
Oh,
lovely
that's true.
building is able to hear us right now. I'm sure they're truly enjoying this as they eat their hamburger that's currently $10.49. I hope you enjoy your cheeseburger, folks.
Or just burger if you don't like cheese.
Yeah. Or veggie burger if you don't eat meat. We want to be inclusive
We're
here.
inclusive here. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I was gonna. Okay, so as we were talking about earlier, people with where you're getting your news from, where you're getting your
Where do you get your news from? I just want to ask that real quick.
I go everywhere.
Okay.
I look at everything
Serbian
possible.
news right away.
Oh,
All
I
the
know.
Serbian
I
news
do.
right
I
away.
do read Serbian news. I
Yeah.
read if I know. This is the reason why I think languages are so important, and I'm so happy that I do know Serbian. I'm
Mhm.
not a linguistic person.
Listen, I wish
doesn't
I knew
help
another
me.
language. It would help me out so much more.
Yeah, it would. It really would. I'm like borderline. I'm okay with Spanish. I can understand pretty well, but I can
understand
read.
when I'm getting yelled at in every language.
I can read pretty well in Spanish. I took Spanish for 6 years, and I did.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was a very long time. I did like very advanced courses, but I haven't done it in a while, so it got a little bit terrible.
Yeah.
But I can understand when I read for the most part. So, and like sometimes with listening too. But when speaking, I'm not a linguistic person now, so it's like I like the fact that I knew Serbian from a young age.
Yeah.
So I would read Serbian news sources because you're seeing a different perspective, and I think that's super important because it's very, especially in today's day and age, it's very easy to just get yourself into this idea that isn't true, but you think it is because that's all you're exposed to. And it goes back to that study I was telling you about that just came out, where it was like whatever you're exposed to, whatever you see over and over again, you just believe that's the truth. It only took like what was it, like a week? It wasn't that long period of a time for these people that were only watching Fox News to then change their views on certain things. They didn't change entirely, but they changed it. And it's like, that's just what happened in 1 week.
It had an effect. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing why I think we should be concerned, to bring it back to Jen Psaki, when a person who was previously employed by an active administration, right? And I would be more okay if in how much he has 2 more years left.
Yeah.
If in 2 years President Biden runs again, he wins. He goes back in for a second term. I would be more okay if Jen Psaki was doing the MSNBC thing those next 2 terms because she was in the previous administration.
So
separate administration.
Let's say she stays these last 2 years. He decides to run again, and then she goes, "Oh, I'm going to MSNBC." You would be okay with that.
I would be more okay with that because although the objectives might be the same or similar, they have changed. It is not the same active. I would not view it as the same active administration. I would view it as a different administration. They might have the same goals and objectives.
I would disagree. I feel like it's...
But I think that they're not
because what you were saying
the
earlier,
same goals and objectives.
But what you were saying earlier was like, oh, she's having these conversations with Joe Biden. She knows what he's talking about. She knows what's going on.
So much changes in 4 years, and he's going to have to get reelected.
But that's true. But if she was there,
run into a whole different thing. She would be, because keep in mind, if she's the press secretary, right, for the White House, she cannot know as much campaign information. It's legal. It's illegal for them to discuss campaigning information within the White House itself. And I don't think she can work as the press secretary for the campaign and the White House at the same time because there's a conflict of interest, right? In my view, I would be more okay with it if she did that only because of the possible, like the reality that she legally has to be separated from it. Her job as the White House press secretary cannot be identical to her job as the campaign's press secretary, right? I can understand people's concern still. I would most certainly have mine, but I would have fewer concerns if it's because I'm going to view it as because he's going to have to run again on a whole set. If he runs again, he's going to have to run on a whole different set of ideals and a whole different argument and a whole different focus. He cannot, I mean, he's not going to have the ability Donald Trump has, where he just says that we're going to keep America great. Like that's, like only he could have gotten away with that and gotten the amount of votes he did. No one else could have done that. I don't think anyone else. I mean, Obama, his first thing was, what was his first slogan? It was hope or change or something it was something like that. A very simple slogan.
Yeah.
And his second one, I think it was something completely different. Like you can't run on the same slogan again and again and again. The American people get bored very easily. They're going to want something different. And when they realize like you've only achieved half of your goal, well, first off, you have to replace the half that you have achieved. So what's your focus going to be now? Well, we're going to double down on education. Yeah, that's going to get people really out to the polls for you if you're going to double down on education. Everyone loves that. Give us something good. What are you going to go after? What are you going to do? Right? Are we going to go invade a country? I mean, there's some people who will go out to the polls if we're going to invade a country, but there's even more people who are going to go out to the polls if you're going to talk about a controversial issue that you might have avoided in the first election.
Which is why people do mention that a lot. Like when people are bringing it up, especially right now with the midterm elections, I just want to say a lot of crazy issues are coming up right now, and people are like, "Oh, how is this even on the agenda?" It's not. People are just doing this to get votes.
This is all. It's all for the votes, man. That Ketanji Brown Jackson's whole thing,
woohoo!
Which she just got confirmed. For those of you who do not know, it was. I have it up here. She got confirmed 53 to 47 in the Senate.
Let's go.
Incredibly qualified candidate.
Yeah.
I was personally, when he was talking about who he wanted to go, I forget what the other candidate's name, but she was a non-Ivy League member. Like she had not gone
to
an Ivy
with your
League law
non-Ivy
school.
Leagues, of course.
And I have theories about how I think we only have one. And that's what's her name?
One what?
Who was the female that Trump got put in?
Amy Coney Barrett.
She went to Notre Dame. So
Yeah.
she's not technically an Ivy League. She's still a big school. That's still a very noticeable school. I think their JD classes have like 5,000 kids in it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally think that if our representation shouldn't be built off of a bunch of people who all went to school with each other. It's like if everyone from Iona ran the US government. Like I think there would be some real concerns if all of a sudden all of the MAC schools were running the government, not because the MAC schools are bad, but because like, why are we just limiting ourselves to these few places? Like, listen, I think Stanford, UCLA, Harvard, Columbia, Yale, Chicago, a lot fewer people in Chicago, Princeton, Cornell. I think all these schools are great. I think they're some of the prime academic institutions that we have in America. And it's cool that they went there, and they should be really proud of that. But not everyone who's running the government should come from these institutions, because you're not getting a diverse set of people, right? These are not,
I wanted to make a joke.
Academically diverse.
That's why we should have people from Pace Law.
That's exactly why. Iona should start their own JD program. No, it's my opinion, where it's just like,
I can respect that.
All of these people are also in the
that,
same. These people are within 10 years of each other, right?
Yeah.
A majority of them. So that means for 10 years, right? Just like people are really irritated when a Supreme Court justice gets put in, because now they're pushing another. That's why it's so important when you're in administration. They're pushing that administration's agenda for the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about it, teachers at these institutions are pushing their knowledge, their understanding, their critical thinking methods, their research methods, all of these core parts which make up a professor for the next 10 years or the next 20 years, or if they teach forever, for however long they're there and however long their students continue on.
So then let me bring up this question then. So do you think that people become a student has a certain mindset, has a certain idea of something just solely based off the professor?
I think professors, it might not be that they adopt the idea that the professor has, but they adopt the thinking methods and thought methods and practices that the professor will have, the research methods that the professor has. Because I will openly say it myself, much of my thinking has been created and established based on people I've interacted with and professors who have taught me, right? I inherently am
But do you think that me and you, if we've taken the same professors, or I'd say I'd use like Danielle probably because you guys take
Yeah.
more of the similar classes together. Do you think that you two then have a similar way of thinking just because you've both been pre-exposed to the same?
Most certainly,
exact-
in some way, we will have a more similar.
But you both come from
structured
different
breakdown.
backgrounds. I don't
It
know. I
doesn't-
agree with what you're saying, but I'm saying it could have
doesn't-
a little bit of a.
It's still going to be the way that we're going to work through a problem, right? If it's a problem that we view in the same light, even if it's a problem we don't view in the same light,
Yeah.
the critical thinking process that we're going to put ourselves through and the hierarchy of needs or focus that we are going to have is going to be very similar. It's going to we're going to run through the same checklist when we're trying to solve a problem. If you task Danielle, you, and I on solving the issues of
solving all of America's issues.
that's a big ask. If you task
What do you
us-
mean? There's like two.
if you task us with trying to solve, hunger or poverty in the United States,
Okay.
it is likely that we are going to run through similar systems, right? How are we going to get this? Right? Well, what class have we taken that are relevant? Well, we've all taken the same relevant classes, right? Okay, well, we're tasked with solving this. Well, what are we going to use? We're going to use our own knowledge. And even if we don't know much, we're going to research in similar ways because we've been taught by the same
How to
person.
do that,
We
yeah.
might have our own effect on it, right? We might implement by saying, like, I like to do this thing fourth, and you're like, I like to do this thing second, right? Or this doesn't really play in as much to me, but this part does. Both parts, both of your parts of your research, your many methods of research are still going to play in. There's going to be like key words that are going to pop out because it's going to be like the professor is going to outline them. Like, this is a key statement that you need to look for, or this is a key thought process you need to look for. It is
Yeah.
going to still be the same effect.
I don't know. I can see where you're coming from. I do see how some people might be like, no, I think it's because what I just said. People might take things differently from different perspectives. But I agree with you. I
Is
think
about
we should
problem
be
solving. It
yeah.
cannot be solving the problem the same way over and over again.
Because then we're just keep having
Because
them.
that's madness.
Yeah.
And that's how I think that in a lot of ways that's how we've gotten here.
Wasn't there that one quote? I'm blanking on it, but it was something
If
about
you
like
do something over and over again
expecting
and expecting a different result, it is like that's a definition.
who
of
said
insanity.
that? Who
I
said
forget.
that? Yeah. I don't remember.
If we didn't
either,
have
but yeah.
Google near us,
oh, if only.
if only.
But going back, another thing I've been seeing about Jen Psaki, a lot of journalists at NBC News, so not MSNBC, NBC News, they've been
I'd like to say NBC owns MSNBC, correct? Or is it vice versa?
NBC Universal owns NBC News. And then NBC Universal owns 82%, I believe, of MSNBC. And then the other percent comes from Microsoft. That's why it's MSNBC. So it's technically both owned by NBC Universal, but NBC News is more center with a liberal lean, but more center.
So they're like center, but they like Bill Gates a lot.
But they are more. NBC News is your typical like. It's more of your
reporting.
It's your typical journalism. MSNBC is your typical, hey, this is my opinion. I'm going to give you my opinion.
Thanks to Microsoft.
So that's what I'm saying.
Question.
So a lot of journalists at NBC News, this is what I've been reading. They've been they're not a fan of this because a lot of people don't really understand the whole business behind it. And to be honest, I feel like sometimes I don't either. Like the whole businessy like world of things, I really sit there and I'm like, so what's this? So, I can understand how people might be confused with that. People then just bracket MSNBC and NBC and then CNBC together.
Well, which is the one that runs the business? Is it CNBC?
CNBC. CNBC is all business.
But no, I mean like the business networking side. Because my like stocks, market analysis. CNBC. I thought it was MSNBC business. I don't really remember, but CNBC does that.
CNBC does that. Yeah, they're entirely like their acronym is like
commerce news.
Yeah, commerce, stuff like that. Commercial, something like that along those lines. And then so a lot of journalists at NBC News were not a fan of this because they were like, it's gonna make us look like we are skewed and that we are fake news. It's gonna make us look like that. Which I 100% like I can agree to that. But
if you have a fire in front of you and if your house is on fire, you don't feed the fire more. You don't start throwing logs in. You want to start dousing it with water. You want to start expressing a better a more realistic truth or a realistic idea or different facets.
But I think then we should start educating people on like a more, this is how you find your information. Go ahead.
Our education system is broken, so it's very difficult to do that.
Well, you don't have to do it through your education system. You just have to find a way to do it.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's where people like Daryl Davis come in. They're very important.
Yeah.
I believe his name's Daryl Davis. I hope I'm not, I hope I don't have the wrong name and I've just said someone who's terrible and I meant someone else. But I mean, like, no, like, you are correct. We do need to educate people more on where to get their news. And I do not think you're wrong. But my only issue is that when groups like this do this, they're not educating, right? And I also don't think it's the job of MSNBC or CNN or CNBC or NBC or Microsoft, really, for that matter, either.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the job of corporations to educate people, because oftentimes
They're
when
just
they
trying to make
educate people,
money.
they're just trying to make money.
They're just trying to make
It's just
money.
like, yes, we're gonna read your ABCs, but we're also gonna throw in like 4 different ads for how to speak a language
Yeah.
better. Like there's gonna be like chop up like A, B, C, and now we're gonna present you an ad from Kraft mac and cheese. Like it
you
is-
had to. I was really thinking. I was like, wow, we're going to hopes about Kraft mac. And
I just
cheese.
wanted to throw it in at the end.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But like that is how it's gonna go. There has to be a monetization. They have shareholders they have to look to. Come
Exactly.
on, let's be reasonable. Like, no, like there's so many things that are just going to become a problem. and
Read your
that's-
legacy media.
Oh gosh.
Or-
Better yet, subscribe to the Post and the Times and go to Substack, where there's so many independent journalists doing their good job.
Bill Gates.
But I would not. Out of fear of legal retribution, I will make no comments about Bill Gates. I mean, look at independent news sources which are going their own.
Yeah.
Look at The Hill. I think The Hill has some really good coverage, very pundit based. Look
If
at
you're-
groups like Breaking Points. I think they're really, really good. They're on YouTube. They
I
do their
watch
own
them
thing.
too.
I know, right? Because I told you about
You
it.
did tell me about
Look, like we're saying, social media is really great. Be careful who you look at on social media. Make sure they're a person espousing a neutral, or at least they're publicly telling you what their leaning is, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too about certain pundits. They don't tell you what their leaning is.
Yeah, that is very true.
They don't tell you. They'll
People
wave
just
their
say,
credentials.
this is how it is. This is how it is.
This is how it is. This is how the system is, man. I've been in there. I worked in that White House. You don't know how it is. You worked in a coal mine. You don't know anything. You need to listen to me. That's how it always is.
And then people believe it.
And then people are like, yeah, this guy's right. He did work for that guy in that thing.
And then there's more polarization, and then nobody.
And then someone's like, why should he tell us what to do?
Yeah.
He worked for a guy who invaded Iraq, and there was no WMDs there. And my kid's like not alive anymore because he was part of the invasion. Like, this is what we're working with here. Let's
Yeah.
not lie about it. You know, this is the issue at hand. It's an elite establishment which views it their right or correct in their thinking because they're alienated from the general populace. I mean, let's not lie here.
But then should it be Jen Psaki and should it be MSNBC's responsibility to let people be like, hey, by the way, this is our leaning? Because at the end of the day, it's a business. So then now does that, if we're going to say that for the media companies and corporations, companies and corporations,
Yeah.
now shouldn't we say that for every other company that there is?
I'm not.
That's the
yeah,
gray area.
I'm
that
not
we're getting
100%
into.
sure. Did you ever see that? I want to call it a boomer meme, but it's not necessarily a boomer meme. I don't like saying boomer meme because it doesn't sound right, because I don't think they can meme well. Nor do I like that I've just said all of that in the past 3 seconds.
We're
But
gonna
there's
put it on
like,
loop.
there's like that statement. I see it on Facebook all the time. Like I've seen and there's just like politicians should have to wear their sponsorships on their suits just like NASCAR race drivers do. And the thing, it's like, yeah, but when you start doing that, like the issue isn't going to be like, oh, we have the battery car over here, the Everlast battery car number 19 and the Kellogg's car. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, oh my God, there's 430 people who are all sponsored by Lockheed Martin, UBS, Microsoft. Like they're all getting lobbied and paid for by the same people. If anything, it's going to scare people even more and then realize, oh, we can't fix this because all of them are getting sponsored by the same people. I think a lot of this comes down to.
So wouldn't it be fix the system?
It would be take money out of the system, put term limits in certain instances in certain positions.
Term limits? What are you talking about? No one's gonna subscribe
Did
to
I-
that. Term limits?
I don't know.
That's-
Is this going to get us kicked off air if we talk about? Do we need to start covering our mouth? Term limits. Can we not say that on air now? Is that a dirty word? I mean, and not even like. We need a change at some point. It's an institution which remains the same will not stand because it will not have the ability to change with the times. Times are always going to change. Is the institution going to do the same?
Yeah.
You know.
And I think with that we could
Take a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll come back and argue more.
do you want to argue more? We have like a few more minutes left. Okay. Okay, so
Oh my! Wait! Before we do,
okay.
I have golden retriever socks on today, and I think you should all go out and buy them because they're the funniest thing on earth.
Could you tell the people where to buy them?
I think I got these at JCPenney. No, I got them at Kohl's. Got them at
okay.
Kohl's.
Okay,
And,
so the people should
go to Kohl's.
go to Kohl's. Do you have a song recommendation?
Oh, I thought we were gonna do. Who are we gonna do?
You said first it was Party Rock.
We should not do Party Rock again.
Yeah.
I feel like that'll be very bad if we do.
We'll do a fun little Harry Styles. Let's do that.
Walk in your rainbow paradise. Strawberry lipstick state of mind.
All right, we're back. We're gonna do our quick little synopsis of both of our point of views, and then we're gonna call it a show. So, from my perspective, I think Jen Psaki leaving the White House and going to MSNBC, I don't think it's her responsibility or MSNBC's responsibility to teach people media literacy. I think that's something that should be done in a different way. I do think it is important for people to learn media literacy and to learn how to get their information. I don't think it should be their responsibility. And I think in general, the press secretary of the White House has been someone who was in the media. So at the end of the day, these people, most of the time, are journalists. Some of the times. So I think if someone does want to go back into journalism, I don't think we should stop them from doing that. And if that's what's in the cards for her, and that's what she wants to do, then I think she should be allowed to do it as long as she is following the current laws and current ethical laws, rules, regulations, whatever that's put in place. As long as she's doing it in the proper way, then I think that's fine. As long as she's not giving anything that she shouldn't be giving and saying and doing things that she's not doing, then I think it's fine. Jack, you
Listen, I agree with some of that sentiment. I do think that there's a few key issues that we need to focus on, though. Once you're a press secretary, you're always a press secretary. You will always be viewed as being a person who represents the executive office and the president that served within that executive, and that's a key thing. You're not you are the president's voice, and that is something that will never die out. Once you're a press secretary, you will always be one. You will always represent that office in some facet or way, and that is important to talk about. And the other thing too is when you're representing that, you also have to view the fact that there are going to be a lot of Americans who do not like you, and if you are going into an institution that is currently at war with the American people or a segment of the American people over ethical values and whether they've lied about major things because politicians, are going after them, you shouldn't be providing those politicians with more ammo to send at you. And you should also be very aware of the fact that sometimes it's just better to wait the 2 years, make sure that establishment remains and doesn't get dragged down because of the position that you put it in, because now you're not just representing the president and the executive, you're representing the president, the executive, and then one of the checks on the executive system itself or the government itself as a whole, and that outweighs anything more. It's way more important than Jen Psaki. It's beyond Jen Psaki herself. It is about the American people and the future of the American people and their ability to check the system itself.
All right. I think this was a pretty good episode.
This was very productive.
It was a great discussion. I really liked it. All right. Thank you guys for watching Hype Hour this week or for listening. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.